And that's like, okay, so anyway, some of you folks, this generation will not pass away when Israel comes back, and some of you guys are going to die before. I'm sorry, this is, no. All right, so what is this warning us against? All who concern themselves with Israel. In other words, if you see a stone, don't mess around with the stone. I mean, don't mess with it, because you're going to get injured if you do. All right, so what is our history? All right, let me see this. Recent attempts to make peace in Israel. Starting with Resolution 242 was passed November 22nd, 1967. What had just happened in 1967 in Israel? The 1967 war, they attacked and the Arabs just got wiped out. I mean, Israel took all kinds of territory, so the United Nations tries to fix this by having a plan, which is the exchange of land for peace. In other words, Israel, you give back the land and then you'll have peace. The resolution called for the withdrawal of Israel from armed forces from territories occupied in the recent conflict. All right, this is interesting. And respect for and acknowledgement of the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of every state in the area, and their right to live in peace within secure and recognized boundaries, free from the threats or acts of force. Now, this is interesting when you read this, because look at this. The resolution is famous for the imprecision, for it not being precise. In English, of its central phrase concerning an Israel withdrawal. It says simply, from territories. All right? The Israelis said, well, this didn't necessarily mean all territories, but the Arab negotiators say, no, it means all territories.
Yeah, no.
But all they had to do is put in all territories. They could have made it clear, but with that imprecision, Resolution 242 has been a source of constant conflict ever since 1967. All right, now, in 1978, we have the Camp David Accords. Name them, can you? Carter. Who's this guy? Anwar Sadat. Who's this guy?
Begin.
Very good, Menachem Begin. All right, so what happened here at the Camp David Accords? Israel signed the Camp David Accords in 1978, peace treaty with Egypt in 1979, returned the Sinai Peninsula in return for full relations with its former enemy. But talks on Palestinian autonomy went nowhere. The talks probably stand as the most successful negotiations in the whole peace process. The treaty has lasted, and it has substantially strengthened Israel's position. However, the peace between Egypt and Israel has not been warm, and then President Sadat himself was later assassinated. Remember that? There was the parade, and there he was up there, and all of a sudden...
Who was he assassinated by?
He was assassinated by Hezbollah, I think. I think it was Hezbollah at the time. They didn't like the fact that he had negotiated with Israel. All right, so here we have Reagan's plan. And it's not just Carter. Reagan also tried to have a peace plan. Reagan's plan approached growth out of the belief that the U.S. must show progress towards solving the Arab-Israeli issue, or at least make energetic attempts in that direction to retain U.S. influence in the Arab world. The policy was meant to show that the Arabs, that America was trying to respond to their grievances. He labeled his position as the next step in the process that was begun with the Camp David Accords to pave the way for autonomy for the Palestinian people. He spoke of, this is Reagan, the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people and their just requirements. Begin, that was the guy who was the prime minister at that time, Menachem Begin, reacted very negatively, calling the plan national suicide for Israel. So the Reagan plan didn't go anywhere, but that's what Reagan wanted. All right, hey, Republican, Democrat, it don't matter, folks. They're trying to get a two-state solution in here. It doesn't matter. This is beyond politics. All right, this is those in charge. They want the two-state solution. You cannot rest and say, well, I'm glad I'm not a Democrat, or I'm glad I'm not a Republican, because both sides have done this. All right, and then there was this. This was after that happened. A couple weeks later, in Time magazine, it says Begin digs in. He's a defiant no to Reagan's peace plan. This was in. Oh, can I read it? It's September of 1982. Is when that magazine came out. All right. Then Madrid in 1991. There was this big. The table was filled with everybody. Madrid was the mother of all Israeli-Arab peace conferences at Madrid in 1991. Israel and all of its immediate Arab enemies came to the negotiating table for the first time. Israel refused to deal directly with the PLO because it was before this that they'd had the thing that happened at the Olympics. It was the PLO that killed the Israeli, I forget what year that was. 72. Yeah, and so they're not dealing with PLO at this time. So the Palestinians formed part of a joint delegation with Jordan. Interestingly enough, Jordan is going to come up here. By the way, what's located in Jordan? Petra is located in Jordan. Right now, Jordan and Israel, they have a treaty. All right. However, in the Psalm 83 war, guess who is one of the members of that? Ammon is named. Ammon is the capital of Jordan. All right. So Jordan is still part of the Psalm 83 war, even though they have a treaty. But and so Israel defeats Jordan, and I think that's why Israel has such ability to go into Petra at the time of the Antichrist, because there is one nation that the Antichrist is unable to conquer. What nation is that? Jordan. One nation. It says Antichrist tried, but it can't conquer Jordan. Well, interestingly, because that's the place where Israel is going to be protected. Anyway, talks eventually petered out, but the principle of land for peace has remained the basis for all subsequent negotiations. Then we have the Oslo Agreement, 1993. Name the parties. President Clinton. Who's this? This is, oh my gosh, I've forgotten now. Yitzhak. No. And that's, of course, Yasser Arafat. That's right. Remember that Reagan thing? Yasser? On Saturday Night Live. Oh, I can't remember this guy's name. Here we go. Yeah, it was Yitzhak Rabin. Yitzhak Rabin. All right. By the way, Yitzhak Rabin assassinated in 1995. All right. The Oslo, this summit in 1993 was the big breakthrough leading to the famous handshake between Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin on the White House lawn. Israel and the PLO recognized each other. Rabin's assassination in 1995 marked a sharp decline in this thing. Israel came to regret the Oslo deal, while many Palestinians saw it as a trap to perpetuate occupation. So it didn't really go very far. Now who we got? Clinton. Arafat. Who's this guy? Ehud. Not Omer. Ehud Barak. In fact, he's a Minister of Defense right now in Israel. Ehud Barak. All right. So he was the Prime Minister of Israel at this time. Camp David II. Subsequent smaller scale agreements at Taba, Y Plantation, and Sharm. I didn't give stuff on this. Were followed by Bill Clinton's final attempt to broker a deal at Camp David in 2000. Agreements seemed close even on the toughest issues: Jerusalem, borders, and settlements. Why deal with Jerusalem? It's a burdensome stone. And if you're going to deal with it, if you're going to try to involve yourself in it, what's going to happen to you? You're going to be injured. You're going to be injured. And so, yeah, this is what we're trying to do. But in the end, the talks collapsed. Each side blamed the other for the breakdown, which was followed by the second Palestinian uprising, the Intifada. The talks took place in July between Israel and Prime Minister Ehud Barak and PLO Chairman Yasser Arafat. Now, we have the Roadmap 2000. This was Reagan. No, Bush. I'm sorry. This was Bush. Prior to the negotiations of the Roadmap 2003, President Bush said, "The United States and the EU share a common vision of two states, Palestine and Israel, living side by side in peace and security." It's a burdensome stone. Stay away from it. But we can't. President George Bush became the first U.S. president to call for a Palestinian state. It proposed a phased timetable, putting the establishment of security before a final settlement. It's designed to create confidence, leading to the final status talks, and even now it hasn't worked, but they still refer to it as time goes on. And then, that was in 2003, and then in 2006 there was the Lebanon War, also called the 2006 Israeli-Hezbollah War, and anyway, they fired on Israel. The tensions are always tight back there. So that was in 2006. And then the next year, oops. Well, I guess I wanted to go here again. I just want to revert. All who lift it will be severely injured. That's my point. That's my point. We're trying to lead these two, but we're digging our own grave. This is interesting. Syrian President Bashar Assad and his wife Asma during a visit to Romania. And I was interested in Asma because Syria is one of Israel's greatest enemies. And so this is the guy in charge of Israel. And I saw his wife, and I thought I'd read about her before I got this. Asma Akras was preparing to study at Harvard and enjoying a promising career as an economist when Bashar Assad asked her to marry him, and at age 25, having spent most of her life in London, she moved to Damascus, married the newly instated Syrian president, and the modest wedding ceremony at the end of 2000, which was held before the year of mourning before, his father had just died, and during the